Tonight, Here and Now investigates the prostitution problem in downtown St. John's. Prostitutes practically on the doorsteps, pimps right across the street watching. People who live in one neighborhood are so fed up they've taken matters into their own hands. Tonight, Here and Now's Jane Adey investigates. Here's part one of her story.
There's a lot of respectable business going on in this part of downtown St. John's during the day. You've got lawyers' offices, the Supreme Courthouse just down here, and 2 churches. But some area residents and some business owners are fed up with the shady business that goes on here as soon as the sun goes down. Any evening, take a ride downtown. This is what you see. Prostitutes on Churchill and Henry Street. Night after night they're here. Night after night men pull up and pay for sex.
I just noticed that there's now 2 girls standing on the corner of Churchill and Henry Street.
One night last week, we toured the streets with one of the neighbors. Roger is like others around here, fed up with the sex on his doorstep and worried about retaliation. So he's speaking out about what he sees, but not on camera.
You get the odd car with a baby seat in the back seat, so you're getting all walks of life, picking up these girls.
He's been watching this sex drive-through operate for years. In the past 12 months, the women are busier, and they're not alone. Roger says there's a pimp working the street.
He stands on the top of the steps of the church, and that's his office. That's how he runs his business, because he can see the corners where the girls are working.
Some deals go down on sacred ground. This is what an area of the Anglican church looked like before the snow arrived. Colored condoms litter the ground. Roger says he suspects drugs are pushing the women to prostitute themselves. Some, he says, are aggressive.
A church right across the street. I've heard of parishioners actually being approached. I've spoken to several lawyers who have their offices on Churchill, and apparently between 4:30 and 5 p.m. you have the clients are actually being approached by these girls.
Some neighbors say this is out of control, but Roger doesn't blame the women. He's more interested in going after the men who cruise his neighborhood to pay for sex. So now they're taking action. We'll tell you how they're doing it right after the break.
Welcome back, everybody. Now, back to Here and Now's look at a neighborhood struggle with prostitution. People in the downtown St. John's neighborhood are fed up with the hookers and pimps who've invaded their streets and doorsteps. So they're taking back the neighborhood by taking on the people selling sex on the sidewalk. Jane Adey now with part 2 of her investigation.
In a downtown neighborhood, the same thing every night.
We have 3 girls now working the block. We have 4 girls working Churchill and Duckworth and Churchill and Henry Street.
Roger wants regular police surveillance to keep Johns away or video surveillance to catch the men in their cars. So far that hasn't happened. Some residents have decided they'll do the work themselves.
These cars that we noticed, these Johns that are picking up the girls, we're taking the time that they stop, the car, the license plate number, and we're issuing that to the RNC.
Not only that, there's now a Facebook site to scare the Johns. The people stopping to buy sex may see their license plate numbers on the internet. Neighbors want men to know if they drive downtown looking for sex, somebody is watching. On this site, the Johns are the target, but there's a lot of sympathy for the women working the corners. Robin Grant couldn't agree more. She runs a drop-in youth program and has some contact with sex trade workers in St. John's.
It's because they're desperate, and obviously they're desperate for money, and I think I'd almost say 10 chances out of 10 it is drugs. So I think we have a real problem with drugs in our city, and that is the root of the problem.
Grant wants more outreach and funding for groups that help at the street level. She says the community has a responsibility to open its eyes to what's going on, and Grant warns about ignoring the symptoms of drug abuse for too long.
It could easily become an epidemic with the oil boom that's coming to the city, and I have a big concern for how that's going to affect the next generation, and that we have the supports in place for the new girls that might become so addicted, so desperate, and feel so isolated, and not so that the neighbors are complaining about once there was 3 girls on the street corner and now there's 30.
Residents aren't naive enough to think that this activity is going to stop. Prostitution goes on in every city. They're just tired of dealing with it on their doorsteps. Jane 80, CBC News, St. John's.